We are taking a look at tract 15 at Elm Hollow on Bull Shoals Lake. We've got it centered on the screen here. Let me see if I can make it a little more clear so we can see the words. The interactive map that we're using, it's called, it used to be called MapRight. We've been using this for years now. Recently they changed the name of the company to Land ID. So now it's called Land ID. If you're downloading the app, you need to look for the Land ID app. But it's been useful for us. We use an interactive map in basically all our listings, and that enables us to kind of mark the features on the property, to add some information, and also to change the base maps. So on this one, for instance, in a minute, we'll switch over to a topo map so you can kind of see how the ground lays and all that good stuff. On the listing page for the property, you'll see a very similar map. It might not have the expanded information about tract 15. It might just show all the tracks at Elm Hollow, but you'll still get all the good info right there. So this tract 15, is toward the south side of Elm Hollow. There are a total of only 16 tracts out here, and this is number 15. It's 7 acres. It is one of the kind of special tracts that has frontage on the Corp of Engineers Land along its east side, which is super nice. Whoop. Had to just let the office cat out for a second there. Sorry about that. So direct frontage, about 200 feet of direct frontage on the Corp of Engineers Land along its entire east side. So you can see that over here. I'll try to keep this quick, because if you've looked at our properties for a while, then you're already aware that Bull Shoals Lake is a Corp of Engineers lake. So it's maintained and controlled by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. There's a huge dam somewhere down in Arkansas that was built in the 40s or 50s, and that's when they backed up, I believe it's the White River, and that's what created Bull Shoals Lake. So it's a huge lake, something like 1,000 miles of shoreline, which sounds kind of crazy until you see a map of the lake. I'll zoom out so you can see it here. And it has all that shoreline because it has all these twists and turns and coves because of the way the ground is in the Ozarks. So yeah, if this were stretched out, you'd have over 1,000 miles of shoreline. The brown area you see around the water on each side of the lake, that is the Army Corps of Engineers, the Corps land it's called, or it can be called the take line. The line between private land and the Corps land is called the take line. And basically what it is it's land that's more or less open for public use as far as hunting and recreation. So similar to the National Forest, if you have a property that borders that Corps land, you actually have direct access into all that land for hunting, recreation, in this case fishing and swimming with Bull Shoals Lake right there. So that's pretty neat as well. If you, just really quickly before we zoom in completely, if you look at any part of Bull Shoals Lake, but say this one for instance, you'll see that in some areas the Corps land stretches far, like up here where the little white glove is waving around. The Corps land stretches way back, like probably half a mile from the lake, and in some cases, maybe down here toward this main channel, it barely goes back at all. And the reason for that is the entire purpose behind the Corps of Engineers having a buffer strip of land on each side of the water is that that enables them to be able to raise and lower the water level of the lake by using the dam downriver in Arkansas. So depending on what they want to do specifically, it could be power generation related, or it could be flood control related. They may want to raise that water level, or they may want to lower it. And so if they didn't have a buffer strip of land all around the lake, when they raise that water level, it could potentially otherwise have flooded people's homes or people's properties, and they didn't want that to be the case. So that's what the Corps does when they do a power generation lake like Bull Shoals. When they did that in the 40s and 50s, the government uses essentially eminent domain to get all the land around where the level of the lake will be. And so that's actually why a lot of folks call it the take line, because I guess the story goes the government just took the land, so they call it the take line. In reality, people, I'm sure, were compensated, but they didn't have a choice, and so that certainly didn't sit well with a lot of people, especially in the very independent-minded Ozarks. So this property, not only does it front the take line, but it fronts the take line in a way that you have very good access to the lake itself. In our minds, it's just about perfect. It slopes down from the county road as you go in there. Where to begin? We're trying to keep it short, but there's a lot to go over on this tract. The county road itself, County Road 618, it's gravel county road, crosses over the east side of the property. You can see it on the map here. You can't see it super well, but you can see it. If we switch over to, say, a Google map, that usually shows the roads even better. That's a little better. That's a Google-based map. So that's County Road 618, crosses the property. It actually ends not even a quarter mile past the property. There's a little turnaround, and that's the end of the county road. That pink dashed line is the trail that we discovered that goes southerly off of the end of the county road all the way down to the end of that peninsula. And that's the spot where basically it looked kind of like a primitive boat launch, in that it was a hard-packed area that sloped gradually into the lake. And I mean, we've used primitive launches before. We would have been comfortable dropping a couple jet skis in the water right there, or maybe a bass boat. Probably nothing too heavy for that. We just would have gone a couple miles down the road to an actual public big concrete boat launch. And there are several, including a great one right up in Theodosia on the west side of the bridge, which is only about 5 miles away. So county road, dead ending after the property, makes it super, super private out here. That trail that goes down through the core land and to the lake, we didn't see it on any maps. So it's certainly something that some of the locals probably use if it happens to be convenient for them, or if they want just a private place to go and put a boat in or fish or whatnot. But we've been down there several times now just to check it out, and we've never seen another person. It's super, super private and peaceful down there. So in addition to the road, you've got an actual power line crossing over the property. So that's this dashed kind of white and black line here. That's a residential power line. So that's physically on the property. So if you're looking for a tract that has power, this one good to go as far as that goes. It does have the physical line on the property, so you won't have to mess with paying someone for an easement or getting a neighbor to sign an easement or any of that. You do have the line on your property, and that's fantastic. Even if you don't require the line for your needs, it adds a tremendous amount of value to the property. In general, people who buy a property, kind of a top tier property like this one at the lake, probably have it in the back of their minds, if not the front of their minds, that they're going to be building either a home or cabin someday. And so that makes power a big deal to them, and that makes a property that has power really just a premium tract. So even if you're not looking for something with power, it's definitely a bonus to have it. Going west from the power line, we've got the gravel creek bed. So that generally would not be flowing. We've seen it flowing once or twice, but more often than not, much more often than not, it's not flowing, and it may have some puddles of water in it at different times throughout the year, some little pockets of water. But it's funny because it's probably the best looking wet weather creek bed we've ever seen. Generally, a wet weather creek bed is fairly small, a little bit of gravel, a few deposits here and there of gravel, not too much. But this creek bed's gorgeous. It's generally from 10 to 15 feet wide, thick gravel on the bottom, areas with large rocks as well. I mean, it's pretty cool. Our kind of theory on this is because about half mile to the north is where, let's go to a topo map. About half mile to the north on tract 5 is where we've been told kind of the original homestead for this area, all this acreage was up on tract 5. You can see that on the topo map it's showing kind of a structure there. That's what that square indicates. This topo map was done in the 1950s, and we did find that structure, and it's really cool. It's a log cabin. It's in disrepair for sure, but it is right there on tract 5, which is pretty cool. But where I was going with that is we believe that homestead was set up there because of this creek, and that when the homestead was set up, it was a year-round creek. And then, as happens everywhere, but certainly does happen in the Ozarks, there was some kind of change in the water pattern underground, and the creek that was year-round no longer was at some point. And so that's where we are today. So it could be a deal where it changes back in a year or 2 or 10 or not. But that is our theory, and that would make sense as to why it looks like a year-round creek bed, but it's not. We think it probably was in the not-too-distant past. So you've got that. Going west from there, property starts rising up steadily, gradually and steadily, and then once you get back more toward the west side, it appears to basically level out, and it's going to be the highest on the west end here. If you look at the lines, the contour lines on this topo map, as you get further back to the west on the property, they appear to get spaced further and further apart, which is indicating to us that it's getting basically more and more level. And if you look at the far west side, this topo map indicates there's basically a huge, fairly flat knoll on the top of this large hill, if you will, and a good portion of that knoll, the flat part, seems to be on the west side of this property. So the reason we've got these labeled as possible future sites is essentially because we have not seen that part of the property on foot. By the time you're done looking at this property listing, you will know as much and maybe even a little more about this property than we do. But based on what we've seen in the Ozarks, based on the topo map, based on the drone video, we feel like these two areas are probably decent choices if you were thinking about doing some kind of a private site back in the property, whether it be for hunting or camping or even building a cabin or a home. Interestingly enough, though, as we were looking at this map just a couple minutes ago before we started the video, if we go to the Google layer and we zoom in, if you look between the two purple sites, you can kind of see the small natural open areas. Those look like they're part of a glade, of a natural glade area, which is characterized by short native grass, some cedar trees, and glades are pretty neat. So I mean that could be someplace you would want to look at doing a site as well. Biggest downside to a glade for your building site is there won't be too much soil cover. So if you wanted a garden or whatnot, you'd have to do a raised bed garden, because essentially what characterizes a glade would be a small amount of topsoil over like a limestone base. And so that's why these areas the grass only grows up to a certain height, and then you won't get the hardwood trees generally because their roots have to go way down. So on a glade, you'll see cedar trees, you'll see these short grasses, but they're just really cool, they're pretty, and it would be so fun to incorporate part of an actual glade into maybe your front yard or backyard or your site itself. So that's something to keep in mind. I'll mention quickly here, you can see this other road on the track to the south, and what that actually is, it's an easement for these folks, and it's not, these guys aren't part of Elm Hollow. They've been out here for years, I'm sure. There are 3 or 4 lake homes down here to the south, and they've got an easement that comes off the county road and goes down and serves their houses there. And the only reason I even mention that is I believe in the drone video, when you're up in the air a couple times, you'll see this particular road, and that gets confusing because it looks kind of like the county road, and for us it was hard to kind of wrap our brain around which way the drone was facing because it looked like the county road, but it's not. It's just someone's driveway essentially, and that's on track 16. That's not on track 15. Heavily wooded property. If we go back to the east side, so where the county road comes in, the county road is on a large flat ridge, and the road itself is level. We know as you go west on the property, it's going to slope down gradually, very gradually. There's not much of a slope, I don't think, between the county road and the creek bed. You'll cross under that power line. It's actually a beautiful little section of ground there, and then we know that once you get past the creek, it starts rising up. But if you're back on the county road and you go east toward Bull Shoals Lake, and actually this is a good example of how they can change the water level. So when this particular base map was taken, the water level was probably at about its lowest, I would guess, and that could be for power generation. It could be they were doing repairs on the dam or whatnot. Let's zoom way out here. So there's still water in the cove, and you could still definitely go from your property to the water, but the level is way down. So just something to take note of. But back to the topography. So if you're on the county road and you head east, it's going to slope down. I believe it's fairly gradual slope down to the water, but let's see if we can't turn on, rather than switching to a topo map, let's just turn on some contour lines. That's somewhat helpful. It's essentially showing what we were just saying. It's level where the county road is, and then we already knew as you go west it slopes down to the creek and then slopes up, but as you go east, this particular set of contour lines doesn't show it sloping down really until you get into the core land. I believe it starts to slope once you get back 50 feet or 100 feet from the county road, which isn't too far from the core land anyway, I guess. But from what we saw, it certainly wasn't too steep to be usable. Our guy who was taking the ground video was able to walk down there and maneuver his way, even holding the video camera in one hand. So good opportunity to have something adjacent to the core land, and like I mentioned before, it's hard enough to find anything that has frontage on the core land. I mean, it's just really hard, and then when we look at a track like this that has such nice access to the water, I mean, it just what is that? That's not even 100 feet of core land to cross over to get to the water when the level's up there. So I mean, it's phenomenal. And to have county road frontage, to have the power line on site. It's like, holy cow, I wish we had 1,000 of these tracts, but we just don't. There's only 16 tracts at Elm Hollow. They're all beautiful tracts, but not all of them have any core frontage. And the ones that have core frontage, certainly not all of them have the same type of core frontage that tract 15 does. So you can't go wrong with any of the tracks out here. But tract 15 certainly has some special things going for it. We'll cut the video here so you can kind of do your own, spend your own however much time you want, kind of checking out the different photos and maps and whatnot. But if you have any questions at all, you can give us a call in the office. You can send us an email. If this tract happens to be sold, we can let you know, if something's available. Our website itself is basically always up to date. If you're seeing videos on YouTube, just because they're on YouTube does not mean the property is still available. We tend to try to leave the videos on YouTube because otherwise a buyer would go back to his listing page or her listing page to view a video, and if it's not on YouTube, it can't be linked to the listing page. So that's kind of why we do that. But anytime you want to see what's available, you can check out the website, and we update that in real time. So yeah, if you have any questions, give us a call. Everything on the site is available with instant owner financing and no credit check. You can also shoot us an email at land@instantacres.com is a good way to reach us, and we hope to hear from you.